Welcome to the Matt Report, a podcast for building businesses with WordPress. Subscribe to the Matt Report at mattreport.com/subscribe. And now your host, Matt.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Matt Report. Today I have a special guest. Her name is Megan Gray, and she's a wonderful web designer that I've been following for quite some time now, and is really a prolific freelancer. This show is sort of coming off the coattails of Paul Jarvis, who labels himself the freelancer. It was a wonderful addition to the discussion about being a freelancer with Megan today. One of the many things, first of all, I love talking to web designers and trying to uncover their process for, designing a project, approaching a client, pricing a project. The real creative part of our business, at least in my case, has always been the most challenging in terms of presenting it to a client, pricing the time, finding good talent. Design is really, really tough. And it's one of these things that, it's worth it because if you look at like Apple, for instance, right? Apple sells so much and is such a powerful brand because their design of product is so phenomenal, right? Or has been phenomenal when sort of the mobile experience and laptops of 5-6 years ago really kicked in. People saw how important design was, at least in terms of the business and how it relates to the consumer. That being said, I think the particular challenge that faces development is, or at least what gives it a good comparison is, development is much more straightforward in the sense of we have our deliverables, we know what we need to build, let's just go and build it. For the most cases, where design is a lot more flexible and a lot more difficult to hit the mark. Megan's processes are phenomenal, as you'll learn, but also it relates to the business that she's put together at houseofgrays.com. What we uncover in today's discussion, is the fact that you'll hear it in her answers, like she's not really looking for work anymore. I know that sounds a little strange to some folks. I think that inevitably we always find ourselves in a situation where we need new work, a pipeline dries out or whatever. But Megan's initiatives online and just connecting with great clients has kept the referral wheel going to the point where she's not super concerned with discovering or having to find somebody new to bring on board. And that's a great discussion on how she's done that. And though she might not have, particular actionable points on how she's done that, you can hear it in her branding. If you watch her, if you follow her online, if you look at her portfolio, that's a good takeaway for you, right? That means that if you're looking at how just the way she's approaching things, the work that she's doing, see how it's all connected. The message that she puts out along with the work that she's doing sort of resonates to the type of client that she wants to work with. And I think that's something that folks who are listening to this can take away from. She also has a great sort of onboarding and discovering process, though it's not automated like we hear a lot of today, and that's totally fine. I mean, even I don't have all of this stuff automated. The questions and the process that somebody has to go through in order to do work with her, it's top notch. And I think that is another valuable takeaway for anybody who's doing creative work or even development work for that matter. mattreport.com/subscribe is the best way to join and stay connected. I'm thinking about doing a breakdown soon on my mailing list of all the tools that I use at my agency, everything that we use to onboard customers, keep everything connected, and run product at the same time. If you're interested in that kind of thing, definitely sign up at mattreport.com/subscribe because I believe I'll be putting that out by the month's end. So definitely join to get that. We'd love a 5-star review in iTunes if you are finding these shows enjoyable, informative, educational, fun, and you want to show your support. You can go over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review. If you go to mattreport.com, you can find the link right over there and do that. I also have Plugin Tut. It's been going phenomenal. You can head on over there if you're looking for new WordPress tutorials. If you're WordPress plugin developer and you're looking for a new way to promote your products, do connect with me over at plugintut.com. Without further ado, let's dive into the show. Hey, Megan, welcome to the program.
Thanks. Good to be here.
I've been following your work for quite some time, envious of your designs. But for folks who don't know who you are and what you do, give us the elevator pitch or the long biblical speech, however you however you want to take it, of what you do.
I think I'll go elevator pitch here. So I am an independent designer under the moniker House of Grays, and that has evolved to doing sort of a holistic branding approach and web design. So I like to work with people who come in and they want to build something from scratch or totally tear down what they have and start fresh, and we will do sort of a branding deep dive, come out with a logo and a new website, and then I like to stay with them for the long haul and ensure kind of the success of their business after launch. So it's a little bit more than just web design at this point, but it's a really good sweet spot for me right now.
I want to get into that that whole thing of now we're no longer just web designers, or we're no longer just web developers anymore. I actually put this question out the other day. What is a web designer in 2016? It's more brand strategy, more marketing, more business development, at least in my eyes. But how do you feel that question of what is a web designer today?
That's interesting because a lot of the inquiries I get, or a lot of the people I come into contact with, it's synonymous with web developer. So the assumption is that if you're a web designer, you also code it and do all of the black magic that's involved on the other side of that. For me, what it mostly means is that I'm sort of a perfect in-between where I have the design chops and the background, and I've worked with the client on copywriting and branding and everything, but I also know enough about WordPress, front-end development, and having worked with a lot of engineers for a long time to sort of be a really successful liaison between those two endpoints. And that's kind of what it means to me. But I don't think there's just one good go-to definition right now, which I think is the problem we're touching on here a little bit.
Sure, yeah. The other thing you mentioned here in the opening is that you like starting from scratch, which I love too, right? I love that. I love the idea of, folks coming to us and to me looking to redesign their sites, and they say redesign and they're thinking, well, yeah, we can sort of just move things around, right? We could maybe change the shade of this site. And for folks who've been listening for a while now, I'm doing this kitchen renovation, and I tell you, this kitchen renovation has never sort of fortified my position as a great consultant than anything else, because I have never been in a situation where there are so many independent contractors who are all operating at their own frequency, not talking to each other, and today just the continued pain of the walls that are still not straight. And I've had this discussion over and over and over again with people, but without me sort of getting on my soapbox and blabbing on about that, why do you like, or at least how do you position yourself when somebody says, you know what, Megan, can we just do a little redesign, maybe just a little touch up? How do you sort of field that and combat that in your own business?
At this point, I think the word to describe how I handle it would be firmly. I think that several years ago, I would kind of work with it and, jump in with the faith that I could work them into my position down the road, or that I could talk them into bigger and better changes. And now I'm kind of at the point in my career, I've been doing this a while, where I realize that the best relationships start out with people who kind of want to let me do what I do for their own best interest, and kind of understand that if we're going to invest their money and my time and work together, that the best results are going to happen if we have real discussions about what needs to go. It doesn't mean that I won't take on those little tweaks or customizations, but if I don't think it's a good fit or a good approach, it's just, I'm at the point where I just will say that. And it's been really nice.
So how do you, customer comes in and they say, we've got this, because here's what I typically hear, and this is just straight out of, the cold email leads that I get and referral emails that I get is, we want to do a redesign. We don't have a big budget. It needs to be done in 2 months, let's say. Yeah, and that's, sometimes that's amazing to get somebody who wants it in 2 months and not 2 weeks.
Right.
You get that typical customer, and like you said, maybe the Megan of 3, 4, 5 years ago would have said, no problem, I'm all over it. Whatever you want, I'll do it. What sparked? What was the catalyst for you to say, you know what, I'm going firm now? Like, no, we can't get this done in 2 months. I need 3 months, and I need twice the budget. What was that one lesson that you learned to really say, you know what, I'm drawing this line in the sand, stamping my feet, saying, no, you can't cross until you do this?
Well, I think it's like that old adage, experience keeps a deer at school, but a fool will learn in no other, kind of thing.
Nice.
Which is to
Nice.
say that I was burned enough times taking on things that I suspected might not be a good fit, or I just totally missed the red flags completely. And the thing is, in the end, it's nobody kind of wins in that scenario. So I think to answer your question is just experience taught me that we're all better off in the end if we take on projects with the philosophy of like do no harm. And I think also just time and confidence in my work and the ability to believe that I'll get a client that is a right fit. I don't have to take on everything. I don't have to say yes to everything for the fear of something better might not come around the corner, or this might be something I'm missing out on.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the major fears, right? Especially folks who have just started out. They might listen to somebody on this podcast, on countless other podcasts, and they hear the typical designer's advice or web designer's advice is, well, just double your rates, just triple your rates, right? And people hear that and they're like, they're just afraid. They're okay. So maybe let's say they're the fresh out of, quote unquote, fresh out of school. They might be charging, I don't know, $50 an hour, right? And maybe they're still doing hourly. Like, we're not even talking, project based or value based pricing at this point, or long term retainer-based stuff. They're like, wow, I'm going from 50 to 100. That already freaks them out. Then they have to sort of position that with the client. At the end of the day, folks who are listening to this going, God, boy, I'm afraid to actually double my rates. I am afraid to double my rates, triple my rates. You have to do it, number one, and you have to take that leap. I know you're scared. We know you're scared. Or just go through the paces then and learn the hard way. Like, I don't have any other sugarcoating to put on this. It's okay, continue rolling through with $50 an hour or whatever you're at, but you're going to learn quick that the customer is either going to really control the project and lead it into potential disaster, or they're going to take forever to pay you. I mean, there's so many things that come through experience that I don't know. I don't know where I was going with it, but I know that there's a fear. There's a definite fear, but then there's also a great learning factor from failing at the same time.
And I think a lot of people, when they feel that fear to double their rates, or they have that hunch that, but I won't get clients, I won't get work. And I think that for me, that was right. I wasn't at the point where I was ready to double my rates. I think that if you have that hesitation to just double it and go for it, maybe that means you're not ready. You're still kind of cutting your teeth and trying to add your value to grow your skills and be worth double your rates. Right. And I think that it's not always the right answer to just charge more and work less. I think that I knew when I was at that point, because I simply couldn't afford to keep taking on the clients who were bargain basement and took up more time than a high touch client. And in the end, I was chasing, tiny paychecks around, and it just got to be where I got better and better leads from the work that I was showing and putting out there. And I thought, I have to raise my prices in order to be able to take on these big projects and do quality work and give them focus and time. I just truly can't afford these small gigs anymore.
Right.
So
one of the other things that you mentioned, of course, is you have to, when you double your rates, or you raise your rates, or you find the bigger client, let me take a step back. This is the game to me, right? This is the game. This is what I really enjoy about our industry is one day you wake up and you're servicing, the mom and pop pizza joint down the street, right? You're building a website for them, but you are ambitious and you're ready to get to the next level. And years go by, and as a year goes by, you start doing a small business site, more brochureware site, and it's maybe now you're at the 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 mark. And you keep rolling, and then you go to conferences, you meet people, you network with bigger agencies, and before you know it, you start landing the 10, the 15, the 20, and then it goes beyond that. And at the same time, in order to elevate, to get to those clients, you have to be ready to serve those clients, because their expectations aren't the mom and pop pizza joint anymore. That's like, hey, get it when you're done, get to it whenever, there's no rush. And then you get into the enterprise or more corporate space, and they're like, okay, you got these 60 days, here's the, RFP, we need you to get this done. So long as they're great clients, you have to perform, right? You have to perform, so long as they're not blocking you, is what I meant to say. So, they're not giving you everything at the beginning, but you have to perform. And to me, that's what I really enjoy about this space. Even if you're a freelancer, even if you're a boutique agency, middle-sized agency, like, you have to be agile, and you have to go from project to project, sort of, very dynamic like that, and being able to not only sell it but deliver on it at the same time. Do you enjoy that aspect of business? Like the sales process to delivery and that whole thing? Or do you sort of like partnering with agencies and having them handle that side of the house?
I've
no pun intended.
I've worked with agencies. I've worked, by myself, probably for equal measure at this point. And I really think that I do better and enjoy it more when I'm doing the business and the delivery aspects that you mentioned, because it gives me more access to the client. Mm-hmm. And in an agency setting, I tended to do more of the design in a vacuum. And that connection to the client and working with them and communicating with them sort of regularly and knowing them really helps influence and shape the design that I'm making. So for me, I like having all hands in everything.
Nice. Do you prescribe to the, all the hype today of, I'm losing the word, it's like a done-for-you service, a productized, systemized approach to things? Or do you really start things with a blank canvas every time you go into something with a client, even from like the discovery process, not even like, doing mock-ups to wireframes to that kind of thing, but do you sort of have a consistent system for every person, or do you just sort of sit there with an open mind and let them, vomit all over your canvas for you and say, here's what we need, e-commerce, we need lead capture, we need all this stuff? Or do you corral them and say, no, this is how I approach building your website?
Yeah, so I've noticed that, first of all, I would say that my process, my leads, and all of that has gotten so tight over the last couple of years that I rarely have to turn away bad clients. I get better leads than I ever have. And I think a lot of that has to do with spending time curating my own site and the things that I put out there on social media, so that a lot of the people I'm talking with from the beginning are people I would like to work with, who are familiar with specific examples of my work. And it's less of that cold leads thing where I'm not in control from the beginning, really. But I will say that I've tried to be good and tame myself a little bit from my wild process and productize it somewhat. So I do try to say, if it doesn't fit in one of these 2 or 3 buckets, like a full whole-on redesign or, a customization of these 3 or 4 things, then I probably am not a great fit. I'm never going to get to a place where it's totally automated and totally streamlined and productized, because I think really the essence of what I offer is a unique creation every time, a dynamic relationship with my clients, and a partnership, really. And I don't mean to use that as a buzzword, but I really partner with people where I can see what they're doing and I believe in it. And that's like the main criteria that I look for. So I'll probably never be hip to any kind of movement that's really smart and about working smarter and not harder and, 4-hour work week or anything like that, because I'm just kind of set in my ways with my process. But I have gotten a little bit better about streamlining everything.
Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you right now, I already know the title of the show is, you'll never imagine, no, it's going to be, here's what it's going to be. It's going to be this web designer never has to turn away leads, and you'll never guess what she did next. Because that's amazing. I talk to so few people, even as many people as I talk to, who, who don't struggle with leads, even if they've been in business for so long. And that's kudos to you. That's amazing that you were able to achieve that.
I'm very lucky because I remember a time not too long ago where I wasn't in this position, and I forget sometimes. It's easy to forget when you have good leads, and I rarely have a problem with a client anymore. I rarely have people who go off the rails or, I have to go out searching for this stuff. And I think that the secret sauce is just being true to the kind of work I like to do, even if it always hasn't been a big dollar amount project, and also just delivering every time on what I say so that a lot of things I get are word of mouth. And that's been really effective for me.
You mentioned that you have spent a great deal of time, really crafting the message that you put out in social media and refining your own brand of your website for the people who are listening, because now at this point they're chomping at the bit for more of this. Like they want to work on a beach just like you. Let's go into that a little bit more. Is there a particular strategy that you do on social media, particular strategy you do with the website, and how do you connect the two? If you could dive into that at any length that you might have.
Yeah, and it's possibly going to be disappointing because I don't really have a strategy other than what's going to sound like a buzzword, which is just I'm just being myself. So the tone of anything I post or the type of work that I do, even if I just create it on my own to keep inspiration going, it's just kind of being authentic. I've been very hands-off about marketing and promoting myself, but what I do post, I think that it's really just true to who I am and the type of people I want to work with and the type of projects that I take on or that are meaningful to me. And so I think my website has tried to make it very clear the type of work that I do and the type of people I partner with, and that I'm not just, somebody to fix your website when it's down, a 911 emergency thing, or that it possibly obscures some element that I am even capable of fixing your website. I've tried to really shift it to design. But social media, I'm really not a genius on that. I've just started using hashtags last week. So
that's awesome.
My strategy is just to be what I am.
That's awesome. Well, let's focus now on the actual client, because and you mentioned partnership. I do want to get into that a little bit more too. But I can tell you that, and you also mentioned red flags. I want to bring that back into the conversation. But there are plenty of times, in fact, where customer rolls along. We get the email, hey, we've got this project, and the budget's there. But then when I get on the phone with the person, the lead of that team, I can already tell that personality is not going to fit with us. It's not going to fit with our style, and it's not going to, it's just not going to jive. I can tell because I've been doing it long enough. Are there other sort of red flags that you pick up on, or is there like a personality test that you even put people through to see if they qualify to work with you?
Definitely. So a couple of things, like you mentioned, a lot of it is just gut and intuition after you've worked with people a number of times. You remember where a previous project took a turn after that red flag. So for me, it's a couple of things. In the initial project inquiry, if they give me like a full brief and 30 links of things they want their site to be like, and they start really getting into details, I already know that this is a person who is not going to be able to hand over the reins. And that's going to be a problem because at a certain point when you work with the designer, if you start micromanaging every design decision they make down to fonts and colors and tweaking every small thing, that designer will still work with you. They might not even complain and they will do it on time, but they have checked out, their eyes have glazed over, and you're now paying a designer rate for a production artist who's just your hands in Photoshop. And then the designer isn't proud of the work. They don't post it. You got exactly what you wanted, but maybe not what you needed. So that's usually my biggest red flag, is that type of personality where they're going to be basically the designer.
Sure.
Sure. That never ends well.
What about the person who has nothing, right? They say that, we've got the funds, we've got the budget, we've got the timeline. We want it to look like, I don't know, Amazon.com. We want it to look like Amazon.com. Aside from the functionality and scoping that, but let's just say they've got an idea in mind, but they don't have any other concepts like internal pages, how the homepage lays out, how the content pages are supposed to be formatted. For the person who has literally nothing, but they have the budget, how do you manage that expectation to let them know that, well, we're not just designing a homepage here. There's all kinds of other pages and user flows that we have to pay attention to. How do you manage that person?
Well, two threads there. The first is that I know that it's unpopular to work with people who don't have their content. And a lot of, talks we hear at WordCamps or posts we read say content first or we don't work with you. And for me at this stage, that's actually a good project for me because now a lot of the work that I do with branding and having background as a writer and editor for newspapers, I actually like to jump in and help steer that. To me, that's ideal actually because I can get in there before they've made a lot of possibly poor decisions without thinking about the design, and we can really start fresh, especially if the budget's there and the stakeholders are willing to put in the time and the work. That's something I would sniff out. It's like if you don't have anything, but you kind of just want me to do everything for you, and then you're going to check in at the 11th hour and veto it all. That's not a fit.
Right.
But if you're saying, we don't know, we need help, we need guidance, we have money, we have time, and we're going to show up, then that is a House of Grace project for sure. But if it is an Amazon.com lookalike project separately, that is a not good fit.
Right. If the customer, or what would your ideal situation be? Because oftentimes people will come to me with nothing. Nice people, nice project, nice budget, but they don't have anything. And they try to sort of convey their idea, by, like lookalike sites. They'll say, well, look at this URL and, just take everything above the fold and that's what we want. And then on this URL, this middle services section is what we want. In your ideal situation, and this is sort of you giving advice to a potential client, like if you wanted them to draft out a basic wireframe, like how would you want them to do that? Is like a PowerPoint situation okay? Like how would you like to receive that feedback, short of just a couple paragraphs and links to look at? Like how can a basic user sort of mock something up to show us?
Well, I don't typically encourage or invite users to mock things up.
Perfect.
But if I'm in that situation, usually I'll just take the reins again and say, show me some of these things. Show me what you like about them. Like it needs to fit in a bulleted list. Backing out from there, before I really even get into that, I do have worksheets that are pretty easy and pretty guided that I put my people through. And then I mandate what I call a Pinterest diet because I have a lot of the clientele that sees things on Pinterest, and that's really a driving force in design right now. Anything that you go to create, they've already seen it on Pinterest, or they've seen something on Pinterest and they come to you because they want that. And so I say at a certain point, we turn off Pinterest, we stop looking at other sites, and the line that always hits them is I say, we're going to create something that other people will pin. And that seems to work to shut down the need to look elsewhere to copy other people's things and help them put the blinders on. But as far as just the mechanics of getting a wireframe from them, I would probably provide a wireframe, and then I use a tool like InVision to keep the dialogue right on the page, so they can say, I like this, I don't like this.
Yeah, I love the InVision.
Yeah, but in my experience, most clients have a real hard time with wireframes, and that may just be my clients, but I think it's a really big ask for them to imagine it as a web page. So it's not something I do as often as I used to.
That is actually one of my questions. And by the way, I want to make mention. I don't want to skip over this. I literally reached for my wallet when you said you're going to go on a Pinterest diet. Let's make something that other people want to pin of yours. I mean, it's such an awesome concept, an awesome line. I love that. That was great. But one of my questions is, how do you, because it's not just your clients, it's my clients, it's other agencies that I've worked with, bigger agencies that I've worked with. When I'm working on them with another client project, is the clients, they can never see the the paint going on the wireframe. They just see the wireframe and they say, "What is this? Is this
Right.
my website?" So what have you done with that phase over the years? Have you just skipped right past it and went right into mock-ups? How have you solved that sort of gap right there?
Me personally, I've always just found it better and more efficient to just jump right into the home page. And I know for a while the big thing was a style tile and a wireframe. And I tried that. I gave it a good go. It was even an official process at an agency where I worked. But I found that the longer I had been doing this, if I did my discovery work right, if I asked the right questions, if I truly immersed myself in the inspiration they had provided and we had good dialogue before, I've never gotten that first delivery wrong. I'm not bragging so much as I'm saying that it is possible to just deliver a first look that is really dead on if, number one, your client selection process has been pretty good and you know that this is a person who has a good chance of being pleased by something you create. And two, if you've done your discovery to where you should never be like way off the mark if the discovery and the client are right. And so for me, like minimizing that risk has made it safer to just proceed into a comp design from the get-go.
Sure.
In most projects.
Yeah. And I mean, and that has a lot to say, like you said, about the types of clients that you work with. And, again, I think a lot of, freelancers, people even starting out, even 3-4 years into it, at least in my opinion, is you're still trying to find your legs, especially if you're trying to grow a small team working together. But if you can really start to cater to a unique audience, even if they're in different businesses, but they have the same tastes, because I'd imagine you serve folks who have unique businesses but similar tastes. I'd guess.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And that's one way to sort of, like you said, not strike out when you get up to bat, because this is the client that this is the kind of design eye that they might have, that you've been catering to for quite some time.
Yep.
One of my past guests, I always reference him. His name is Jose Caballero. He works at an agency in LA, and he runs something called used to be called The School, SKOOL, and he has this process called the Core OS, and I just love it, and it's about design, and it's meant for web designers. He's a web designer at heart, but it's really about partnering, and this is where I circle back to you and how you mentioned how you do partnerships. Like, there is an entire process that he has of building a story of the brand that you're working with the stakeholders of a project. And it's to the point where you're defining a new story that they've never even thought of, because they have brand goals or whatever, but they're busy running their businesses. They're either executives or, solopreneurs, and they're running their businesses, but they've never really sat down and started to build a story, which then leads into user profiling. Who are your real customers? Like, define a story about this person. Give them a name, give them an age, give them an income. It is super in depth. Do you really go deep into defining the potential user of a customer of yours? What does that process look like? Or do you just focus on other areas of key points of a project?
The thing that occurs to me is when you talk about the story or that method, is that I think a lot of us as designers are natural storytellers. I think that a lot of times we take on a project and we click with it, or it resonates with us because we see that story. And sometimes we don't always know that's what's happened. When somebody emails you and they want to work with you, sure, some of the times you get excited because it's a recognizable brand or it's a big budget. But a lot of the times, our hearts are in the right place. We're excited about it because we get it. We see their story, we get what they do, and we know that we have a great way to tell it. And I've learned that, like, while a lot of us have that gut instinct to identify the story and a means to tell it, it's about formalizing that process, like you mentioned. So for me, I do now do a lot more work about having them tell me their story, how they got into the business, kind of what it means to them, why it matters, and why they get out of bed every morning. I think some of my clients are uncomfortable with some of the questions that I ask them initially, but I tell them to just roll with it. And then kind of identifying who they think their core audience is and maybe who I think it is instead. Sometimes that's different, and where we can kind of merge those, or how we can communicate to those people, or where it's going. But I think, to answer your question, which I'm a little foggy on.
No,
now,
I'll tell you right now, you hit the nail on the head when you said you make your clients uncomfortable, because especially in Jose's process, which I haven't adapted, to a T or 100%, but I've pulled major chunks of it and have incorporated it into our process. It's a very uncomfortable experience for some folks.
It is. It should be, right?
And exactly, it should be. And back to why I love this game is, look, we're not just here to, take these orders from you. Sure, you're a client, and we're going to, provide a great experience, customer service, make sure that you're happy. And if you're not happy, we're going to fix it. But you should want us to challenge you. And I've been in the room with, marketing leads and sales leads doing this process. In the beginning, they're like, "Oh my god, like this is going to take an hour and a half." Yes, this is going to take an hour and a half.
Sure is.
And then they're like afraid to, like, we go through this list of giving adjectives of different actions that people are going to be taking when they go to their website and all this stuff. But at first they're uncomfortable, and then the magic happens when one person says, when one person defines it one way and the other person defines it another way, and then they start talking to each other, and then and you just sit back and you just stay quiet, and they sort of work it out, and you're like, "Don't you guys have never had this conversation before, huh?" And they're like, "No, we've never really thought about that before." It's like, okay, so now it's all coming together here.
Right.
I mean, we should just be called web therapists at this point. I don't know.
That's really what it is. And I provide an ongoing web therapy service to my clients. But one of the things, like, I have a number of questions that make people feel uncomfortable, but one of them is so simple, and it just asks you to write yourself a 5-star Yelp review. And people are like really hesitant to do this, I found. And then I asked them to write a 1-star Yelp review for themselves, which I guess they didn't see coming, because they thought I only wanted to know the good. But I get some really good responses, and then from there, people really kind of pick apart what they're doing and why they're doing it, and it's changed everything for me to ask those deep dive questions.
Are these questions, again, going back to sort of productized automation? Are you sort of sending these on an ongoing email? Do you have a sort of a survey that sort of fires off every few days, while they're in the project with you? What is that?
Gosh, I wish. That sounds like a great idea. No, I actually just have a Basecamp template for a number of projects, I think 3 different types, and then those have documents in them that are PDF forms that I fill out. I tried a couple different ways, and that was the way I found that people kind of took it off to their own little nest and took the most time filling it out. When it was an online survey, which I actually did with Gravity Forms, people rushed through it to sort of submit it. And when I did the PDF form with the fields, I found that people kind of got more into essay-like responses. And then it seemed like once they did that, they had gotten all out of their system, and they didn't feel the need to hit me up every couple of days with, "Oh, and I thought about this, I like orange. Oh, and I saw this site that I liked." Like, it was a way for them to really just get it all out at once.
Yeah, no, that's great. Let's turn to WordPress now, and sort of, some of the things going on with WordPress. How have you, one of my questions here is, how have you sort of bridged the gap between the function of WordPress, and let's just say the WordPress editor, to keep things easy, the function of WordPress, the editor, to design, right? And how have you bridged the gap of customers who go, "Wow, my typography and everything looks beautiful on the front end, but why doesn't it look the same in the back end? Why am I using this sort of archaic editor? And, you want me to use maybe a class, maybe you want me to inject like a style class in this text editor. How do I do that? How have you bridged that gap? Because your designs, in my opinion, are are leading, right? They're stunning, number one, but I feel like they are
Thank
progressive,
you.
and I think you are top notch. It's not just a standard sort of theme look and feel where you can kind of get away with it, right? In a sense, your designs are great. And I'm sure there's
Thank you
people
so
who
much.
say like, boy, how do I make a blog look beautiful in your mock-ups like you have in your PSDs, but when I'm typing it in the back end, it doesn't look the same. How have you bridged that
Sure.
gap? Or
Gosh,
have you
that's a
not
tough.
yet?
I tend to not run into that too often. I think that ever since I sort of focused on the design over the development or the theme building, I've worked with people who are really smart and who tell me no when I have an idea that's a little too bleeding edge and is going to be a terrible idea on the admin side or the publishing workflows. But for the most part, I think that working at 10up alongside some of the smartest engineers ever for a year has really kind of helped me have that discipline to create designs that are safe and smart and easy for a publishing workflow or for a user to create. But I do also feel like when I work with my smaller clients and I just either give them the WP 101 plugins embedded in their dashboard or a recorded walkthrough of their site, despite the fact that at the beginning it's rough for them, they tend to have no complaints and continue managing their site down the road. So I haven't run into that challenge quite as much, and I think it's maybe just because now I'm not creating so many problems with my designs for my users.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is there anything about WordPress from the designer's perspective? You sort of answered it with that last one, but with various page layouts, and I'm sort of hinting at the fact of at page building here.
Uh-huh.
I don't, as much as we all bash page builders, I don't think page builders are a bad thing if done right. Because, and let me take a step back from that. Like, I'm talking more like if there was a content layout that was unique on a sales landing page versus the layout of a blog post versus the layout of maybe a team page, if we could give users some control, right? Maybe some control to bring in
Yeah.
large blocks of design elements that they could mix and match, not, click here and adjust font size and click here and adjust padding, but major blocks of design that they could mix and match safely. Do you see, I think Wix, excuse me, God, no, not Wix, Squarespace.
Gosh.
Yeah, Squarespace. I meant to say Squarespace. I'm going to go back and edit that out. I feel like Squarespace gives a good designer-like building experience. It's elegant, right? It's elegant is probably the word I'm looking for. Do you kind of hope that WordPress has that? Do you think that's maybe a bad thing? What's your take on page building to a degree?
So I've used them pretty extensively. I built my own site on Make Plus as a page builder plugin, in fact. And I've used Beaver Builder, which I think is my favorite. I think for me, where I'm at is that I'm only able to be a independent WordPress designer, website designer, because WordPress allows me that flexibility. That's how I got into this, frankly. So for me, I appreciate that it breaks some barriers down and that it may not be the cleanest, best production-ready site, but I can get a site up that looks pretty great, and you wouldn't be able to tell it was done with a page builder by myself. And that's a cool freedom for me to have. But when it comes to working with clients and with other developers, I typically kind of relegate my page builder use to a prototyping tool. So when, a developer that I'm working with needs something quickly spun up just for a page template that we hadn't considered, and I cannot imagine waiting like 50 layers deep in Photoshop, then I'll just spin up a template with a page builder to, get the idea, the layout out there, and then I might tweak it in CSS with the front end styles. So for me, it's a mixed use product that I'm really thankful exists, but I also am friends with enough developers to not say that to them.
Yeah.
Because I know what I'm going to hear. Although I will say that some of my more grumpy friends are really, really big fans of Beaver Builder, so I feel safe using that one.
Yeah. And that's a great answer because, number one, I love the answer about how it affords you the ability to perform your job. Not only to get the job done, but I'm assuming it also helps you be profitable too. You don't always have to spend hours trying to figure out code snippets or getting the functions right, because we all know that WordPress is very finicky on that front. So I love that answer, that it sort of empowers you at one end of the spectrum, and then on the other, prototyping. There's nothing wrong with it, right? And it's a great way to rapidly conceptualize things or prototype things, and I find that very powerful too, for both aspects. So that's an awesome answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a golden age because I was building websites when you could only use like 5 fonts and you couldn't do any of this. So for me, like, I understand the challenges of page builders and the downfalls, but for me, it's like any tool, if it's used well and responsibly, then it's a good thing for creativity.
Right, and why not give, and of course this is topic for a whole other discussion, but why not give the power of some of this stuff safely to an end user, right? So that, you design the major elements that they can incorporate, but they don't have to be knocking on your door every day to say, oh, we're releasing this new post and we want to put this full width hero across the middle with a video in it. Look, let's just have the technology in place that allows them to do that. You've already, designed it. And if they want to put it, they can put it. If they don't, they don't. But they don't have to be, recurring every time that you need a new post or a page up knocking on your door. Sure, it'd be great for your invoicing, but they probably don't want to pay for it anyway.
Right, it might not be great for anyone.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, Megan, do you have any other words of advice for the freelancer who maybe just started out listening to this episode, and building his or her business in the design world? Do you have any advice towards them to get going and to stay focused, because it's a rocky road in the beginning, it's a rocky road in the middle, and it's a rocky road at the end. So,
it's one big rocky road.
One big rocky road. You have any advice for folks who are just starting off?
For me, looking back now, I would say that, it's really important to constantly just focus on your work. There are a lot of distractions out there, a lot of noise, a lot of ways to get caught up in what other people are doing and how it's better or different than what you're doing, or what people tell you should do or how much you should charge. I think at the end of the day, the thing that will carry you the furthest is constantly perfecting your craft and finding out what your voice is and being true to that, because 10 out of 10 times the people I follow who are successful and who are happy, frankly, which is the real success, they're doing something that they love, that they've gotten really good at over the years. It's not an overnight success. It's 10,000 hours and then one day overnight kind of thing. So I really think it's just important to keep your head down, get to work, and just keep grinding on it. And I guess never get too comfortable.
Yep, that is an amazing answer. That's usually the thread of this entire show, and why I continue to do it. Megan, it's been an amazing episode. Where can folks find you to say thanks?
I'm on Twitter and everywhere else, House of Grays, or my website is houseofgrays.com.
It's amazing. Everybody else, mattreport.com/subscribe. Join the mailing list. #1 way to stay connected. And if you ever want to pick on somebody on Twitter, his name's Rob New.
That's the guy.
That's the guy. Rob, I hope you're listening. Hope you made it this far. We love you, buddy. All right, everybody. We'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks, Megan.
Thanks.